hello. I know some of you, but I don't know the rest of you. My name is Mark Ritson. So I'm a marketing professor based at the University of Melbourne Business School in Australia. But I come here visiting to teach at Singapore Management University once a year. And I do that because I'm sponsored by LVMH. And I'm sponsored by LVMH because I spent 15 years, up until about 2 years ago, working for LVMH out of LVMH House in London, working on all kinds of projects going back to the deep and dark history of LVMH. And when I wanted to retire from my LVMH life because I was sick of going to Paris, beautiful but tired of going there, we trained my replacement, and then LVMH very generously set up this extremely generous relationship with SMU, which I just thought was a thank you gift, but really is their way of locking me into an LVMH going to be big in the future, which does make sense. So, I'm here for the week, and one of the things we're going to do is just, give you a sort of insight from some of the stuff that's going on elsewhere in the world. So today, I'm going to talk for about 45 minutes, it'll be interesting, I promise, about the state of marketing this year and into 2018. I was going to talk about brands, and then more and more, because this year it's really been the year of communications on all kinds of levels. I'm going to focus on communications, which isn't normally what I do, but as you'll see, so much has happened this year that I felt it was the right topic. So I'm going to look at what's been going on in the world, and then I'm going to, at the end, bring it back to LVMH implications, and then we might throw it out to you guys, okay? We will send out these slides via mail, if they're at all useful. Welcome. So, what I want to do is go back in marketing time, okay? So here we are in 2017, we're approaching Q4, can you believe it? We're almost through 17. And what I want to do is go back just over 10 years, okay? So all the way back to about 2005 in time. And for some of you, that was when you may not even have been working for LVMH. But it's a time I remember being not that long ago. I was about 4 years into LVMH time then, or 3 years in. So what I'll do is I'll use the UK's data, because that's where I was last week. But the data is very similar in Australia, in America. It's just not very similar to Singapore, but I will show you some Singapore data later because it's a weird market, right? So for now, let's just look at a more traditional market, and then we'll talk Singapore, which is dodgy things going on. Anyway, so believe it or not, in 2005, when many of us were working as marketers, maybe more junior than now, there were 4 big marketing communication tools. So there were 4 big tools we spent our money on, okay? TV, which in the UK and most other places, about a quarter of all the money spent on advertising went to TV. Print, in the form of classified advertising in the back of the newspaper, and of course news brands, meaning big full-page ads in the newspapers. Classified about 19%, print advertising about 15%, so news advertising was almost 35%. Then you've got direct mail, which sounds weird to some of you younger members of the group, but direct mail 10, 12 years ago was like the hot technology in marketing, right? You remember? We used to think of it as it was a really sort of ROI, and it really had strong numbers and so on, right? So sending letters to people sounds weird now, but that was the hot stuff. That was about the same, about 15% of the money was spent on direct mail. So if you add all those up together, believe it or not, 3/4 of advertising spend back then went on basically 3 tools: TV, newspapers, and direct mail. That was it, really. When I say big 4, but really it's big 3. It's only just over 10 years ago, okay? Now, there were a bunch of minor tools, still very important, but smaller, probably more beloved to LVMH in some cases. There was magazine brands, out of home, radio, and cinema, and they accounted for about 20%. And there was a couple of small digital tools. We didn't call them digital then, we called them interactive. There was search, which was just getting going. We'd had search by then for about 10 years, but we hadn't had search advertising for long. And there was desktop display, which was basically banner ads. That was about 7%. Okay? So that's what it was like 12 years ago. So here's what happens in that intervening period, which is stunning in terms of transition, right? Well, I've been a professor for like 20 years, right? For the first 10 years, nothing really changed. Those numbers were fixed, right? We didn't look at it as a line chart, we just looked at it as a pie chart. In the last 10 years, as you'll see, masses of things change. So the first thing that happens is news media falls off a cliff. So classified advertising is replaced by search. News brand advertising is dropping 10 to 15% a year consistently now. That's also true of magazine brands, which are rapidly becoming non-sustainable. And of course, direct mail, which is a big surprise when I looked at the data, also now in quite a significant decline. And so what was once, if you take TV out of the picture, nearly 60% is now 20%. And that is a remarkable decline. And particularly newspapers, as we'll see later, it's a big loss. Big loss. For two reasons, right? When we look, so newspapers were funded on advertising. If you look at the typical newspaper 10 years ago, a third of its income was from circulation, you paying for a newspaper. 2/3 of it came from advertising. So the 2/3 is pretty much gone. And that means that most news media around the world are in free fall. And you know, there aren't any photographers left, there are very few journalists left. Most journalists are 26. They're just cheap labor. That's going to come back to haunt us later, because you'll see we don't have a fourth estate. So we don't have a Woodward and Bernstein. Like, don't worry. You're late, for God's sake, you're late. No.
Sorry.
Voluntary session. Oh, look at you're late as well. For God's sake. There's no chairs now. Don't worry, kid, there's one around there. Don't worry, it's not an efficient. So, we've lost all of our journalists, which is a real worry, because they're not going to, there's no Woodwards and Bernsteins left, which we kind of need, as you'll see later. Okay? Now, of course, the decline of news media is replaced by the rise of digital media. So we see search continuing on that ascent, and it isn't slowing yet. Google continues to grow at plus 20% a year. We see desktop digital display is flattening now, for reasons we'll get to, but still has grown well, as has digital or online classified. Now, we can't even look at the big one yet, which is here, mobile display, because it really only gets going in 2010. So 04, we haven't got anything happening. And of course, this starts a very quick and rapid ascent. And this, of course, is now YouTube on your phone, and more importantly, Facebook video. Okay? They're on the phone. So really, those guys account for the decline of most of the major tools. From 7%, in most countries, not Singapore, but in most other countries now, the so-called digital tools account for 50, in most cases now 60% of total spend. So we've passed in Australia this year the point where digital takes more than half the pie. In the UK, that happened 2 or 3 years ago because of the BBC. It's a common trend. In the US, they're approaching it now. Digital is the majority option, and traditional, so-called traditional, is the minor option for the whole industry. Now, I'm fascinated by this moment here, okay? This is a moment next week, exactly 10 years ago, which is the Facebook moment. It's a stunning moment that we're only just beginning to talk about. So, 10 years ago next week, Mark Zuckerberg brings together 250 of the world's biggest advertisers, biggest advertising agencies to New York, and tells them that advertising is essentially over. Now, you have to pause and admire this, right? He's 23 years old, okay? And he tells the world that advertising as a technology is now finished. His exact words were, Facebook ads represent a completely new way of advertising online. For the last 100 years, media has been pushed out to people, but now marketers are going to be part of the conversation. And they're going to do this by using the social graph in the same way our users do. So no more advertising, no more pushing. You're going to start having relationships with customers. Now, most of you lived through this nonsense. You remember? We were all going to have conversations. Social media was going to replace advertising. You all had social media managers, and we were going to start having conversations between our lipstick and our clients. It was all going to be lovely and beautiful. And his message is very strong. Everyone believed it at the time. Advertising is dead. Pushing out messages is dead. Clutter is dead. It's now going to be about conversations. And it will be replaced. The new era of advertising with dialogue, collaboration and organic conversations between people and brands. Now, all of this turned out to be total nonsense, of course, right? All of this rubbish was powerful and we fell for it. Customers don't want ads, they want a conversation. It turned out that they really didn't want a conversation for the most part, right? Maybe with some of our brands they did, but for most people, toilet paper and toothpaste and all those other things, you know, we didn't want to have a conversation with our chips, it turned out, right? And the famous moment was the Oreo cookie moment, which, if you remember, was the moment where there was a power cut at the Super Bowl 6 years ago. And Oreo sent out a tweet that said, "Power out, no problem. You can still dunk in the dark." And everyone went, "Oh, this is the future of communications." And I tried to helpfully point out throughout this period that, and literally there's 100 headlines going, Oreo wins the Super Bowl, Oreo's communication wins, no, no, no. They reached 0.3% of their customers with this, right? But that didn't seem to matter. We'd fallen for a hook, line, and sinker. Now, to be fair to Mr. Zuckerberg, all of this is total nonsense. This is not how Mr. Zuckerberg makes his money, right? It's not about organic conversations between consumers and brands on Facebook, because Mr. Zuckerberg has throttled that and reduced the organic reach of brands almost completely. Mr. Zuckerberg is making very large amounts of money from advertising which is pushing and clutting. Now, we don't know whether he knew this at the time. I doubt it, right? But if you look at Facebook advertising, which is effective, yeah, it is no different from what we were doing 50 years ago with TV. There are some different implications, but ultimately, as you know, as you go through your Facebook feed, this is cluttered commercial advertising messages. But the genius of the man, to destabilize the advertising industry with this social media nonsense, but then replace it with digital media, which is just advertising by a new form, was truly an amazing moment. My point here, though, is two things. Oh, and just to prove that, last year, Media Post voted BBDO the agency of the year because they've worked out that Facebook is not a social network, but a media channel. Yeah? So to be clear, social media has been almost completely a waste of time. Digital media, placing advertising upon these social channels, has turned out to be very useful. But I'm just intrigued with two things. How everyone went mental 10 years ago for the whole idea of social media, right? And organic. Everyone fell for it. And no one has pointed out that there's a big difference between that organic nonsense and the digital stuff that has successfully replaced it. Now, let's get on to weird Singapore. So why is Singapore weird? Well, there's many reasons Singapore is weird, as you know, but one of them, as you can see here, this is 2017 data. I forget where we got it from. But if you look at that, according to the estimates, and again, forgive me, I've forgotten the source, apparently Singaporeans are spending significantly more of their time offline than online. Now, this is all anecdotal. The Singaporeans don't strike me as particularly, you know, offline people, right? I still haven't seen anyone actually reading a newspaper here, right? So that's intriguing. Even more intriguing is even if you bought into that, only 13% of Singaporean ad dollars are spent on digital tools, and 87% continues to be spent on traditional offline tools. Now that makes very little sense given the world is pretty much 50-50. And so even that shortfall doesn't make much sense. And I don't know, does anyone have a speculation about why so much of the media in Singapore remains on newspapers, on TV, and hasn't moved to digital? There's a couple of potential explanations. Anyone? I mean, it could be just down to, you know, media incentives, that the newspaper and TV companies are paying, but it's an intriguing one, right? Such a high-tech society is so far behind. All right, now let's go to the next part. So, the decline of news media, the rise of digital. Here's the next interesting one. TV. We know it started up here at 24%. Guess where it ends up? The answer is about 24%. TV hasn't budged from its share of the pie in most markets. There's a slight decline here, certainly in the US, in Australia a little bit. But the reality is, throughout this 10-year period of digital growth, standard TV advertising has so far remained relatively untouched. Now that's an interesting prospect we'll come back to. And here's the Singapore data over that time. And again, you'll see my point, right? So the newspapers are ridiculously safe here for some reason I can't work out. TV is flat. Digital is growing like the clappers, but I don't understand where the digital growth is coming from, because literally everything else is flat. So it's an interesting picture that I maybe don't want to dig any deeper into, but something's going on. All right, let's move to dodgy digital. So, what's been interesting is how digital is quickly maturing, and this year is facing some significant threats. It's been a hot, beautiful thing for 10 years, and suddenly the baby is starting to look ugly, okay? So, there's always been a fair amount of, let's call it, exaggeration on the part of digital proponents. So this is Sheryl Sandberg saying that every day they have a Super Bowl in terms of audience on mobile with Facebook. And this is Eric Schmidt, the chairman of Google, saying that YouTube is bigger than TV, and that was said 5 years ago. Neither of these statements are true. So, how do you get away with saying stuff like that? To explain it, let me show you this. Which line is bigger, A or B? Same. They're the same. But I make it hard by messing around with the way we present it. Yeah? It's much easier to see they're the same when you compare them apples to apples. That's how media works. At least that's how it used to work. We offer you different programs, we offer you different platforms, but you're able to compare apples to apples. Who reaches your audience for the best or lowest amount of money? One might have expected that when digital video in the form of YouTube and Facebook video started to enter the market and ask for brands to invest in it, it would have used the same video metrics in order to show its power. But they didn't. Rather than apples to apples, we kind of got like an apples to refrigerator comparison. Yeah? Deliberately difficult to cross-compare. Let me show you a couple of examples to illustrate. So, ESPN had the rights to the World Cup in Brazil 2.5 years ago. And they broadcast it both on TV and also with a free app on mobile. At the end of the 30-day soccer tournament, ESPN announced that the audience for the World Cup on TV was 4.6 million, and on digital it was 115 million. And there was lots of headlines about how TV was dead and digital was replacing it. But you have to remember the apples to refrigerator issue. This is a TV audience. It's not perfectly measured, but it's relatively well measured. And this is a per minute audience. At any time during the 30 days when ESPN was broadcasting a game of the World Cup, the average number of people watching that broadcast, not the ads, the broadcast, was 4.6 million people. That's what we call an average per minute audience. That's how we do TV audience. This is not an average per minute audience. This is what we call a digital view. Okay? Let me explain to you what a digital view is. You're sitting at home, looking at your phone, and you see 2 seconds of a man running across grass. You're in that audience for the whole month. Right? That's a digital view. What happens if we take that giant 115 million person audience and turn it into a per minute TV audience? It turns into 300,000 people, okay? Or about 7%. That's not a bad thing. It's a nice little extra cherry on the top, but it is not killing TV. Get used to that single digit, because that's what digital brings. A little extra, and it's not changing. Now, what happens if we translate the 4.6 into a digital view? Unfortunately, the Nielsen guys didn't do that, but last year, when the production company behind The People vs. O.J. Simpson presented the audience numbers for their show, they announced proudly that the average per minute audience in the States was 12.6 million, and if you wanted to work in digital, that number turned into 259 billion views. Yeah? Apples to refrigerators. Remember the Rio Olympics. You will remember reading that Rio was going to be streamed and digital and TV was dying, right? This was the headline in every country. NBC's Universal Olympic upset, streaming trumps TV. Rio ratings are hurting. Are streaming options eating into TV viewership? The answer is definitely not, if you just looked at the data. But the myth was, TV's dead, man. and streaming is replacing it. So let me show you in Australia how people watch the Olympics. And Channel 7 is one of our TV stations. It took me about 3 months to get this data off them. Why would a TV station not want to share how successful TV was? And the answer is because they spend more money on their digital coverage, even though it's worth nothing, right? So if you look at the total audience viewing of the Olympics over the 2 weeks per actual minute and hour of viewing, it was offered a little bit on social media through a free digital app and on TV. A grand total of 68 million hours of coverage were watched on social media, Twitter, Facebook. 325 million hours were watched digitally, using the 7 app. And the remaining 20.7 billion hours were watched on a television. So 2% watched digitally and 98% watched on a television. Now you might say, well, that's Australia, it's a very basic, unfashionable country. You may be right. If you went to America, where NBC also offered the Olympics on an app, digitally and also on TV, you would have found again that 3% of the American population watched the Olympics digitally and 97% watched it on television. And Jim Bell, the chap in charge of this, was shocked to see digital just 3% viewing. And they're shocked because they're spending a fortune on their digital apps and it's delivering almost no audience at all. Last one, best one of all, NFL and Twitter. So last year, the NFL that plays American football games, that runs American football, was worried because millennials don't watch TV anymore. Turns out they do, but never mind. So they decided to broadcast the games not only on TV, but also live on Twitter. Again, headlines last year, the death of TV, the Twitter verdict. NFL live stream reaches 2 million viewers. 2 million viewers, man. Held a resounding success. NFL's Thursday Night Football live stream is a hit on Twitter. The NFL, Twitter's kingmaker. Let me show you its kingmaker with publicly accessible data. So you see those 2 million viewers? That was our digital view that's bullshit. Remember that? It actually turns into a permanent audience of 265,000 people. Now we think, well, that sounds quite reasonable because it's a small country, right? It's not reasonable in America. That same night, 15 million people watched the game on TV. So again, we get to those similar numbers of 98% watching on the television and 2% watching it on social media. The best bit is how much they paid for the media. Brands that wanted to advertise on Twitter that night paid $250,000 for a 30-second TV spot on Twitter. Brands that wanted to put it onto the TV, with NBC, paid $550,000 for a 30-second spot on Twitter. Now that looks, like differential pricing. Look at the audience difference. Now think about the cost per thousand. It was 27 times more expensive to reach customers on Twitter than on regular TV. That's insane. But the constant thing is that millennials are special and we need to go on to digital because of millennials. And that was what Twitter claimed. Listen, 70% of our tiny puny audience were millennials and therefore it was all right. And that's true. More younger people on Twitter, right? So you got 70% of 265,000 is about 185,000 millennials. Congratulations. NBC Thursday Night Football, 20% of the audience were millennials, 20% of 15 million is 3 million millennials, or 16 times as many millennials as you got with your social media channel. It's nonsense. So, guess what happened on Thursday? Did the NFL give up after last year's experience on digital? No, they said the problem is Twitter. Oh crap. What we need to do is work with a bigger, more successful player. Let's work with Amazon and their 58 million Prime viewers in America. So last Thursday night, NFL broadcast Thursday Night Football free on Amazon.com. Guess what happened? Well, the good news is Amazon's NFL audience beat Twitter's. The bad news was it's still much smaller than TV. How much smaller? Massively smaller. So they managed to get 372,000 people per minute audience, and NFL football got 14.6 million. It's not Amazon that's the problem. The problem is people really like to watch television. Yeah? what will happen next, mark my words, in 12 months' time, is there's only one way to get people to watch sport digitally. What's the solution here? How does Amazon get a big audience to watch its TV live? We have to stop TV getting access because it's just not fair. We give people a choice, they want to watch TV. So we have to make this myth come true by either buying the TV channels or buying the rights, which is exactly what's happening at the moment. Yeah? We will close down TV access and we will force them to watch it digitally. So let's look at the challenges for digital media because they're very relevant to WMH. I think there are 8 big challenges for digital going forward. The first one is highly unreliable metrics. Nobody's perfect, but digital metrics are extraordinarily wobbly. This is the most extraordinary data I've ever seen. So, this is what happens if you look at Facebook reach per country. So, in the UK, for example, extraordinarily, you can reach 7.6 million people aged 18 to 24 on Facebook. Why is that extraordinary? It's extraordinary because there's only 5 million of them in the country. What? The reach is 2 million more than the number of people who actually exist. If you want to go to, let's go, I don't know, Brazil's good. You can reach 33 million 18 to 24-year-olds with Facebook. Stunning, given there's only 23 million of them in the country. How is it possible that Facebook's reach exceeds 100, 110, 120, 130% of the market? And the answer is because they don't know what they're doing, right? But people have been buying this stuff with millions of dollars. There's no, there's no easy explanation for this, right? There hasn't been one, okay? I haven't made the data up. This is from Facebook's own reach data. And what's stunning is the response of digital marketers when you point out to them there's something wrong with Facebook, it can reach more people than exist. That's a problem. They go, which can't be a problem. Thousands of tweets like this. Chris Davis, shouldn't we challenge or question the accuracy of the population data as well? I'm guessing it's driven by census or electoral roll data, neither of which will be classed as being that accurate. Yes, that's right, Chris. It's not Facebook's data that's wrong. The British and the French and the Canadians and the Brazilians have miscounted the number of people in their country by tens of millions. That's right, you've got it. Here's Facebook's response to this issue. Reach estimations are based on a number of factors, including Facebook user behaviors, user demographics, location data, and other factors. They're designed to estimate how many people in a given area are eligible to see an ad a business might run. That's just a definition of reach. That doesn't explain why they're 2 million, 10 million, 20 million off. They are not designed to match population or census estimates. Why not? We are always working to improve our estimates. That's their explanation. Okay? It's a non-denial denial. And the biggest criticism came from this guy. When it comes to measurement, Facebook is still not 100% there, even though they're making incredible strides. They can't just put up case studies to appease advertisers. It's easy for Facebook to do that. What Facebook and clients now want is better analysis. And that's particularly damning because it came from the head of Facebook in the UK, Ian Edwards. Right now in the UK and the US, Facebook are trying to convince advertisers that a 2-second ad is massively influential on consumers. Why a 2-second ad? Because that's all they're managing to get as you scroll through their newsfeed, so 2 seconds is definitely no one's buying it. Number 2, even if they're accurate, we need cross-platform metrics. So in Australia, we do the Australian Open every year. This is how many people watch the final. An average per minute audience of 3.6 million. Now guess how many people watch the tennis digitally. See if you can work it out. Anyone? Come on, you've got 64 million live stream minutes, 10 million live stream minutes here, 186 peak concurrent live streams. What does that mean? It's impossible to work out what that means. And that's deliberate, because if you could work out what that means, it would come out at about 1%. Something that 7 don't want to admit, because they spent as much money digitally broadcasting the thing as they did putting it on television. People prefer TV. So, we need cross-platform metrics. This is Keith Weed, the head of Unilever's marketing. he did a scorecard in New York 2 weeks ago, and he said, look, digital's done better at some things. Cross-platform measurement is still an F. We don't know what a digital view equates to with other media, and therefore it's impossible for us to compare. Number 3, transparency. This is where it gets a bit scary. So, there are 2 large digital companies, Google and Facebook. This is Google's mission, brand mission. Google's mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Okay? That's a great mission. It's just never been more contradictory to a company in the history of the world. Google are the direct opposite of this in everything that they do. So here's a video of Matt Ritson, who's the head of Google in Europe. He's been called in front of British MPs to explain why Google in the UK, with its UK sales team, selling UK search advertising to UK clients to target UK customers, is classified as Irish advertising. Because that was great tax, right? Check out the world's most transparent company.
Would you agree that in substance the selling is taking place here?
Because I'm not a tax expert and you're talking
This is
about
not a tax question, this is a sales question.
Well, I think...
Would you agree that in substance the selling is taking place here?
I think, given the language you're using, the substance of the sale, when the money is spent and changes hands, happens at the moment somebody searches on the technology platform.
Can I come on to that? Because can you just answer this question? Remembering what Chair's talking about, the large contract she's referring to, I'll ask the question again. Would you say that in substance the selling is taking place here?
As I said previously...
Yes or no?
Well, I think this all hinges on selling, and selling has a range of activities within it, which is why I'm being precise in my language about the activities. There are some
which is the final one, Mr. Britton. Once the agreement has been reached that a sale shall occur, the very, very final bit is the billing.
Well,
the substance. You said yourself, did you not, that the customers feel they're being sold to?
Yes.
Did you say that?
Yes.
Right. But why would they feel they're being sold to?
Because I think...
They are being sold to, that's why. I mean, why don't you just call a spade for once?
So these people are called salespeople, and they...
Get their idea, right? A company whose mission is to share information freely isn't really sharing information at all. In Australia last month, the head of Google in Australia, Jason Pellegrino, was unable to tell the government what Google's revenues were in Australia. He said, I'm not in a position to speculate on those numbers. We have a policy globally of not reporting numbers in a specific country, and I'm not in a position to break that down any further. I won't even share their country revenues. The creation of Alphabet, Google's holding company, has one single purpose. From next year onwards, it means that Google no longer has to declare its revenues or profits even in the United States, which is part of a broader group. And as Jason Kim noted last week in the New Yorker, Google's business model is to extract as much personal data from as many people in the world as possible at the lowest possible price and resell that data to as many companies as possible at the highest possible price. It's the least transparent company in the world, and yet it's claiming to be transparent. Then we have Facebook, currently embroiled with Russian spies selling advertising to destabilize the American democracy. You could not make it up. There is a world of trouble coming for Facebook. They either argue that their advertising is not effective, that's a problem, or they argue it is effective and they got Trump elected and the Russians used Facebook to destabilize America. Which would you prefer to choose if you're right? Right now, 2/3 of Americans get their news from Facebook or other social media channels, and most of that is, fake news. And there are now currently 11 insanely creepy ways that Facebook is spying on you right now. Starting with the microphone on your phone if you have the Facebook app live, which is listening into conversations and what you watch on television in real time. Try in your house with your partner, talking about some arbitrary product, concrete blocks, roller skates, ice hockey. You will discover within 48 hours that your news feed, Facebook, will start to sell you the aforementioned items. Facebook may even be so secretive that even Mark Zuckerberg no longer understands what the hell is going on, right? So lacking in transparency, no one is quite sure what's happening. These two companies will dominate our lives for the rest of our existence on the planet, and there could be nothing scary. Number 4, important for LVMH, bottom funnel focus. So we build sales funnels. Yeah, Mark Hennessy's done it for many years. Sales funnels are really important because they allow us to work out where we should focus our marketing dollars to have the biggest impact. The problem with digital media, it's very good in some respects, is it has a bottom funnel focus. Digital tends to gravitate towards stuff at the bottom of the funnel where attribution shows us there's a big response. And the problem with that is we miss the power of tools that we cannot measure, like PR, like editorial, like advertising, because they don't have a direct, immediate response. And the bigger problem, we miss the power of integration. So we invest more down here with Facebook and search because it seems to be giving us a better return. But of course there's a catch. These tools need to be achieved to feed these tools. And one of the greatest charts I've ever seen, at least in my time, is a study of more, as you can see down here, more than 3,000 different campaigns. And it looks at the proportion of campaigns where they only spend money, about 29% of them only have one platform. So this is just a Facebook campaign, or just TV advertising. If you take some of your money from TV advertising and spend it on a second platform, let's say search, on average, you get a 19% greater return on your investment by spreading the money across 2 tools. Similarly, if you grow into 3 platforms, let's say TV, search, and radio, the figure rises to 23%. With 4 platforms, 31%, with 5 platforms, 35%. The great lesson that we learned in the 90s is it isn't about not doing digital or traditional or TV or print. It's about combining them together in an integrated campaign, and that will always give us, if we know what we're doing, a better return on our investment. So the problem with digital is it tends to get us to spend all of our money down here. It shrivels the top of the funnel. And as time goes on, what we're beginning to see, and I've seen it myself with my clients, brands where this can't be harvested as well because this has started to decline. Yeah? I'm not saying don't do this, but spread your money across both. I've been doing some speaking in Europe with Peter Field and Les Binet. They wrote a book called The Long and the Short of It. It's a really good book. And what that says is you do the long stuff over here, probably TV and print, and the short stuff down here, probably with search and digital. You do both. They make it very powerful. Put it another way, if you have a tree, a fruit tree, you need to water it, and then you can pick the fruit once a year. What's happening right now is we're picking fruit too much and not watering the tree enough. And overall, we're getting less and less fruit each year now because of it. And if you really wanted to push me from what I've seen as to what's the ideal mix for luxury brands, I would tell you that we need to water our tree with outdoor, print, TV, and then we need to pick our fruit with search. Those two are a perfect mix. Yeah? The digital video stuff, I don't buy the reach being as valuable or the quality being as valuable as what we can get from so-called traditional. Not always happen. Okay. Programmatic, let's enjoy programmatic. LVMH is spending a significant amount of money through what's known as exchange, automated exchange. Let me show you how ridiculously stupid that is. So, programmatic is a growing source of our spend. Let's take $100 million of LVMH money and spend it on programmatic advertising. Here's what happens to it according to the Royal Federation of Advertisers. Well, 5% goes to your media agency, that's the standard commission. 15% goes to the trading desk that arranges the programmatic exchange. About 10% goes to the DSP, which handles the demand side buying. 25% goes to data targeting and verification, which is a lot of broad ad tech stuff. And finally, 5% will go to the actual advertising exchange. Now, when I was a very young man, big advertising agencies had a problem because nobody wanted to pay 15% commission. They felt that was ridiculous. Well, welcome to the future. On programmatic, you pay 60% commission. If you spend $100 on programmatic of LVMH's money, 60 cents in the dollar is going to all these guys. It's never going to hit media. It's a complete waste of money. So you get 40 cents in the dollar, but you don't. Because programmatic media is filled with bots, robots, non-human traffic, whatever you call it. They don't buy Louis Vuitton, trust me, right? The best estimates would put that at about 12 of the 40% are non-human traffic, illegal sites. It's part of the law when I have time, click farms, yeah? So congratulations, we're getting 28 cents in the dollar. That's what programmatic is giving us right now. That comes from the World Federation of Advertisers. That's an independent body. They're not pro or anti anything. This is good data. And to prove that it's good data, there's a guy at The Guardian, their chief commercial officer, is a very bright guy. And he wanted to just have a look at this, because The Guardian is here, right? The Guardian is they sell advertising programmatically. So we bought £1,000 of Guardian advertising programmatically. Guess what percent of that money he got back? He got 30 pence in the pound back. So absolutely right. 70 cents disappears, and 30 pence actually gets into an active media role. Brand safety, a huge one for LVMH. When we buy programmatically, we don't know where it's going. Remember in the old days, we used to spend hundreds of hours worrying about where our ad went. Could we get it on the back page? Could we get it on the front page next to this? The problem with programmatic is we're not buying that anymore. We're just buying the consumer who's going to see it on their website or on their newsfeed. So where it appears is much, much, much more uncontrolled. Now, I don't know, for example, who The Guardian's target readership might be, but I don't think these handsome hairy men are necessarily reading The Guardian. So I think there's something wrong with The Guardian advertising on jihadi websites. Similarly, every person deserves a holiday, but I'm not sure whether jihadi terrorists are necessarily the right people to send on an all-inclusive sandals break. And not even nutters deserve a phone, but I'm not sure whether Islamic nutters like this deserve a Samsung phone. My favourite of all time is the Marie Curie Cancer Charity in the UK, looking for volunteers among the neo-Nazi party's blood and all that. Yeah? So Marie Curie has still not gone back to programmatic because of this, right? Most of their ads, bizarrely, appeared on a neo-Nazi site. Now what's interesting about all of this is what happens next is big brands discover this and they pull their advertising. So there's 3 cases in the last 3 months. JP Morgan, P&G and Uber have all discovered brand safety concerns. In each case, that's caused them to pull their programmatic money. And then they discover that the whole programmatic thing is a complete load of nonsense and is not having any impact at all. And if they hadn't have pulled their advertising, they would never have worked it out. These are very smart, very switched on companies. I think most companies, including LVMH, are wasting money on programmatic and have no idea what's going on. It's the Wild West. Trust. If you look at the Nielsen Trust Index, you'll find that they separate out traditional media from digital media in terms of which consumers trust the media most. That's a silly way to do it. You should compare them all together. But helpfully it doesn't matter because all the traditional tools are more trusted than all the digital tools. So if you look, there's a significant trust issue down the bottom because digital media is not trusted. Similarly among clients, I sat through an astonishing session in New York Advertising Week 2 weeks ago where a couple of the guys admitted the degree of transparency going on in the industry and how bent it's become out there. It's a truly scary world right now. This is Martin Katz, who runs one of the big media agencies. He said there is an enormous lack of trust. Maybe 3 or 4 years ago, clients were starting to say there is something going on. I don't know what it is. Now they know what it is, or they think they know what it is, and that has created a larger degree of angst. And that angst is manifesting itself in clients marching with their feet. Big media agencies playing naughty games with the budgets. Yeah? Most of them are working now. So they used to work off a 5% commission. They're down to 0.5 or 0.7% commission because that's not how they make their money. They're making their money around the back from rebates. And the whole thing is ticking towards the problem. But the scariest thing of all is the digital duopoly. So first of all, let's prove it's a duopoly. A duopoly is two companies, as you know, that own the category, that own digital media. The proof that it's a duopoly is there's not a single instance that anyone here or myself can recall where these two companies competed against each other overtly. One example where Facebook has said we're better than Google or vice versa. Never happened. Why? Because the two of them run the industry. Now that's scary, and again, this is UK data, but it will be even stronger in the US or in the rest of Europe. So, this is data here that shows you what proportion of total spend goes on digital. You'll see it's about $9.8 billion, pounds, which is more than half now the total spend. The UK has passed the 50% mark like most developed markets. And if you look at the share of the digital money and where it's going, you'll see that more than 50% of it, almost 60% of it goes to just two companies, Google and Facebook. Why is this scary? It's scary because of what happens next. Google's annual growth rate is 20% per year. Facebook's annual growth rate is 40% per year. Run the numbers on this already strong stranglehold, and by the year 2020, 2/3 of all advertising money in the UK will be spent between Google and Facebook. Not the digital money, everything. That's a power that we've never seen before. Yeah? Google and Facebook are bigger than any advertiser. Yeah? They are international and global, and that gives them power that, frankly, they should not have. And it's not just me saying this, right? Everyone is talking about the same thing. Keith Weed, the marketing chief at Unilever, Mark Pritchard at P&G, Martin Sorrell, and even the head of the IPA, which is the big advertising association in the UK, recently released a direct call to action that something has to be done quickly because we are heading into a very, very dark place. All right, finally, there's a little bit of ray of light here. The other smaller tools haven't been touched, and this is true also in the US. Cinema, radio, and outdoor have just continued as if nothing has really happened. And it's interesting, of all the tools to be optimistic about in the next 10 years, digital is probably the most exciting. Outdoor is likely the most exciting. Outdoor is now more than 50% digital in Singapore, in the UK, in Australia. So it's become a digital medium. And if they're smart, they will learn how to become a more trusted digital medium. So the history of strategy in recent years is people like Michael Porter talked about first mover advantage. Get there first and own the mountain. But over the last 10 years, we talk more and more about second mover advantage. Let the others go first and make mistakes, and then we will follow and do a better job. Digital has that chance. It has a chance to have all the great advantages of digital media, but to do it in a more transparent, more believable, more cross-platform way. And I've been working with JC Decker, which is probably the biggest outdoor company, trying to create a programmatic exchange which is simple and which is transparent and which advertisers can trust. So there's a chance here that outdoor, which has very strong potential, could have a really lovely time over the next 10 years. Something, however, has to give, and 2018 is a fascinating time. So we know the big digital duopoly has to grow. They continue to be hungry for dollars. There isn't much blood left in the print media. I mean, having worked for News Corp, there isn't much money left that they can take from the advertising side of the equation. And so they're going to have to target TV or outdoor or radio, who classically have not given up any dollars yet. And 2018 presents itself as a fascinating place. Will these guys slow down, or will they start to pull from these tools here? So the next 10 years really opens up a fascinating discussion. It's been an incredible decade already, but imagine what will happen over the next 10 years as your careers at LVMH progress. There is almost unimaginable implications of what will happen by the time we get to 2027. It's almost, well, it is impossible to predict how this will play out. So, finally, some LVMH implications. I think brand safety remains a big concern for our brands. We know our reputations are more vulnerable at LVMH. We get 10 times the pain for our ads appearing in the wrong place versus other people's brands. We're more vulnerable. So brand safety must remain a concern. Number two, this is where LVMH wins big compared to Burberry or the other smaller groups. Every major client, P&G and Unilever down, is now bringing most of their media buying and programmatic in-house. So we're all going to buy, everything's going to be programmatic. Everything's going to be bought automatically very soon. There's no doubt that has to happen. It's just got to stop being so dirty and inefficient. Every major company is pulling their automation systems in-house. And I'm not sure what LVMH Media is up to, but I'll bet you, if not this year, next year, they will start doing the same thing. And we will build a skill to have our own programmatic free from all the dirty agency business, and we'll become experts in it. If you ask me right now how most of our brands should do their media, and this is an unfair thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, I really think the potent combination of TV, maybe outdoor, and search remains a winning mix of all the tools that we see together. TV's numbers, they are declining a little bit, but the impact of that, and outdoor as well, remains predominant. However, let us not neglect premium digital. Yeah? Avoiding programmatic and going direct to premium digital channels remains possibly our best opportunity for digital media impact. Don't neglect traditional media. It's not dying, and you can get a tremendous impact still from good print, but certainly from outdoor and TV. And the most important point is the one we're tending to forget in this battle between traditional and digital. In all my time at LVMH, the most powerful media of all was number one, service staff, number two, windows, and number three, visual merchandising. That was true 100 years ago, and it's still true now. Sure, the mass media is changing dramatically, there's no doubt about that. But don't take your eyes off what luxury brands have always depended on for their biggest impact. The service that you get, yeah? The windows and then the rest of the visual merchandise. You know, a window still beats any other form of communication hands down. It does. If you do the research properly, it's the same as it was 100 years ago. I don't know whether you got TV or whether you got Facebook digital, but don't forget the power of the most important communication forces, which really haven't changed at all. Thank you very much. Any time for questions?
I have one question.
Please.
You know, most of this data goes from, like you said, from Australia, UK.
Yeah.
So if you have China in the equation, would it change a bit, because especially Facebook and Google, you can tell?
Yeah, it's a great question. We don't get that, obviously, we don't get good data from China for various reasons. And everything we're learning is that China is leading the charge now, and that the combination of having, you know, controlled digital exposure and the ability to buy retail and the ability to pay, which is what's going on, as you know, in China, is significantly now ahead of what we have. But we don't know, we don't know. And it's a tricky one. And the Chinese market remains overheated, let's say. But I think you're right, there's definitely a different dynamic there. Any other questions? Happy? Cool. Well, look, welcome to the house. And let me just do a quick promo before you go. On Thursday morning, the students of Singapore Management University who are currently mystery shopping many of your brands will be presenting back their recommendations of how to improve. It'll be bad stuff, but never mind. How to improve the experience according to them. So if you want to come down to Singapore Management University on Thursday morning, please let us know. Mabel, you can tell them, couldn't you, with the details? If you email Mabel, she can let us know and we'll send you an invite. You can come down, ask questions, see the students in action. But if you want to hire them, hire them. We picked SMU because they have the best students. That's our opinion, right? We sampled all the other schools. They are cracking students, frankly. They're junior students. We're talking about retail roles. They don't want to be in charge of anything. If you want a decent student, I'll sell you one for cheap on Thursday. Okay? No, I really will. I'll give you a discount. Okay? So please come down to SMU if you can, and otherwise stay in touch. It's lovely to see LVMH and to see how things are going so well. Link in with me, and I'll keep sending you presentations in which I give like this, but with more swearing. Okay? Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you very much.